is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.
In the headlines, at least 16 people were wounded after a gunman opened fire at a vocational high school in Turkey. The attacker, a former student, took his own life at the scene following the deadly rampage. In a moment decades in the making, Israeli and Lebanese representatives convened at the U.S. State Department. The talks signal a radical shift toward permanent peace and the potential disarmament of Hezbollah. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says there is renewed hope for a breakthrough in the Middle East. Guterres stated it is highly likely that stalled peace talks between Washington and Tehran will resume in Pakistan. President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced a new drone production partnership with Norway. However, the leader warned that Western air defense support remains critically insufficient and is arriving too slowly. The IMF has downgraded its global economic outlook, cutting the 2026 growth forecast to 3.1%. Officials warned that a prolonged Middle East conflict could drag growth as low as 2%. A remarkable celebration in Germany as Fatu, the world's oldest gorilla in captivity, marked her 69th birthday. The beloved primate celebrated the milestone at the Berlin Zoo with a special feast. And in sports, World Aquatics has lifted all remaining restrictions on Russian athletes. Swimmers and divers will be allowed to compete under their national flag and anthem ahead of the 2028 Olympics. I'm Carlo de la Peña. Newsline World starts now. For news in a moment decades in the making, representatives from Israel and Lebanon convened at the U.S. State Department on Tuesday, signaling a radical shift toward permanent peace and the disarmament of Hezbollah. More of this from Virgil Parva.
Israeli Ambassador Yakel Leiter and Lebanese Ambassador Nada Hamadi Muawad sat across from each other at the U.S. State Department for over 2 hours, mediated by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Following the session, Ambassador Leiter described the exchange as wonderful, asserting that both nations are now on the same side of the equation. The primary goal of the talks, according to Leiter, is the liberation of Lebanon from what he described as the occupation of Iran-backed Hezbollah, a proxy he says has reached its weakest point in history.
We discovered today that we're on the same side of the equation. That's the most positive thing we could have come away with. We are both united in liberating Lebanon from an occupation power dominated by Iran called Hezbollah. There is now the opportunity to degrade its proxies as well, to move them out of their horrific occupation of another country, and to move into an era where Lebanese and Israelis can live side by side in peace. And yes, vacation in each other's countries.
Leiter praised the bravery of the government of President Joseph Aoun, which moved forward with the talks despite direct threats from Hezbollah leadership. While Lebanese ministers have raised concerns about ongoing military activity in the south, Leiter insisted that the degradation of Hezbollah is precisely what created the window for these direct negotiations. The talks also saw a sharp exclusion of European intermediaries. Leiter was blunt about Israel's stance, stating that they want the French as far away as possible from the peace process, preferring the direct mediation of the Trump administration.
What gives me hope is the fact that the Lebanese government made it very clear that they will no longer be occupied by Hezbollah. And Iran has been weakened. Hezbollah is dramatically weakened. This is an opportunity. This is the first time our two countries are sitting together in over 3 decades. Let's feel the moment. Let's enjoy the moment.
A joint statement released following the summit confirms that all sides have agreed to launch a formal direct negotiations at a venue to be decided. While the fighting in the southern Lebanon continues, the vision shared in Washington of citizens crossing border for business and leisure rather than conflict marks the most significant diplomatic opening in the region since the 1990s. This has been Verhil Parba, your Global Citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has signaled a renewed hope for diplomacy, stating it is highly unlikely that stalled peace talks between Washington and Tehran will resume in Pakistan. Almar Fursuelo reports.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres addressed the growing lawlessness in the Middle East, warning that respect for international law is being trampled. Despite the collapse of the first round of negotiations in Islamabad, Guterres revealed that indications point toward a restart of the dialogue in the coming days.
The indication we have is that it is highly probable that these talks will restart. I had today a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan, and I want to take profit of this occasion to express my enormous admiration to Pakistan for the very important initiative that Pakistan has been assuming in order to bring peace to the Middle East.
The UN chief's remarks follow President Trump's recent comments suggesting a preference for returning to the negotiation table in Pakistan, even as the US initiates a naval blockade against Iranian ports. Guterres also addressed the direct talks currently underway in Washington between Israel and Lebanon. He offered a sharp critique of the regional dynamics, stating that Hezbollah and Israel have historically helped each other to destabilize the Lebanese government, each using the other's actions as pretext for continued military operations. The Secretary-General emphasized that for Lebanon to survive, the government must have a monopoly of the use of force. He urged both actors to stop the negative conjugation of their actions that has left Lebanon as perpetual victim.
So it's time for Israel and Lebanon to be working together instead of Lebanon being the victim. Well, I believe that nobody expects that these talks today will solve all the problems. But I think it will be very important if these talks create the conditions to a change in the way the actors have been developing their activities. Until now, the truth is that Hezbollah and Israel have always helped each other to destabilize the government of Lebanon.
As he appears to travel to The Hague for the 80th anniversary of the International Court of Justice, Guterres' message remains focused on the indispensable nature of the international legal order. With the U.S. naval blockade now in effect and civilian casualties mounting in Iran, the UN is pushing for the $12 million in recently attributed humanitarian aid to reach those in dire need as the ceasefire hangs by a thread. Reporter for Newsline World, Almar Fursuelo, SMNI News.
Tensions in the Persian Gulf have reached a critical juncture as dozens of vessels remain anchored in the Strait of Hormuz on the second day of a United States maritime blockade targeting Iranian ports. Let's hear the updates from Ina Mortel.
From the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz, of oil tankers and cargo vessels can be seen halted at the entrance to a critical global energy passage. U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the blockade, accusing Iran of enforcing extortionist tolls on international shipping, while U.S. Central Command clarifies that the operation is selective, targeting only vessels entering or leaving Iranian ports. The disruption has sent shockwaves through global markets, with roughly 20% of the world's oil gas supply at risk. Trump has issued a stark warning, stating any Iranian naval interference would be immediately eliminated in a quick and brutal response. Tehran remains defiant, with Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps asserting that the waterway is under its full control. Meanwhile, international opposition is mounting. China's foreign ministry has branded the blockade dangerous and irresponsible. As diplomatic efforts in Islamabad remain in a stalemate, humanitarian agencies are warning that the disruption to fertilizer and grain shipments could soon trigger a global food security crisis. The United Kingdom and France are now expected to host emergency discussions to establish a defensive mission aimed at restoring secure passage through the strait. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Ina Mortel, SMNA News.
China has criticized the United States over its reported military blockade of Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz, warning the move could worsen regional tensions. This report. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun warned that the blockade of Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz risks undermining a fragile ceasefire and threatening global shipping routes.
在相关方业已达成临时停火安排的情况下，美方加码军事部署，采取定向封锁行动，只会激化矛盾，加剧局势紧张，破坏本就脆弱的停火局面，并进一步冲击海峡通行安全。这是危险和不负责任的行为。中方认为，只有实现全面停火止战，才能从根本上为缓和海峡局势创造条件。中方敦促各方恪守停火安排，聚焦对话和谈大方向，以实际行动推动地区局势缓和，尽早恢复海峡通行正常。
Guo urged all parties to adhere to ceasefire arrangements and prioritize dialogue, stressing that a comprehensive end to hostilities is the only path to restoring stability in the region. Addressing reports that Washington may impose additional tariffs on China over alleged arms shipments to Iran, Beijing rejected the claims as pure fabrications.
我们此前已经表明了中方的立场，我们想再次强调，中方在军品出口方面一贯采取审慎负责的态度，根据本国出口管制法律法规及承担的国际义务，实施严格管控。有关报道纯属捏造。如果美方执意以此为借口对华加征关税，中方必将坚决反制。
Guo also reiterated that long-term security in the strait depends on peace in the Gulf, calling for immediate steps to restore normal maritime passage. China says it will continue to push for diplomatic solutions as concerns grow over the impact of rising tensions on global trade and energy supplies. The president of South Korea, Lee Jae-myung, has warned that ongoing conflict around the Strait of Hormuz could continue to disrupt global energy supplies as peace talks struggle to deliver clear results. Daniela Paulite has the details.
Speaking after recent negotiations, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung said discussions have yet to address key issues, with the situation remaining uncertain as tensions escalate in the region.
지난 주말에 진행된 중동 전쟁 종전 협상이 합의점을 제대로 못 찾는 것 같습니다. 계속 협상을 하겠지만 호르무즈 해협을 둘러싼 양측의 갈등이 고조되고 있어서 상황을 낙관하기가 쉽지 않습니다.
The South Korean government is now strengthening its emergency response system, preparing for prolonged high oil prices and supply instability. Lee also announced support measures for affected citizens, including financial assistance set to be distributed starting on the 27th, while urging fair and transparent implementation at the local level. In addition, he called for expanded public transport incentives and accelerated efforts to build alternative supply chains and restructure key industries.
이번 전쟁 과정에서 확인된 우리 경제 산업 구조의 취약점을 개선하는 노력도 박차를 가해야 되겠습니다. 대체 공급망 개척, 중장기 산업 구조 개혁, 또 탈플라스틱 경제 실현 등을 국가 최우선 핵심 전략 프로젝트로 추진해주면 좋겠습니다. 아울러 전쟁 당사국들도 보편적 인권 보호의 원칙 그리고 역사의 교훈을 바탕으로 세계가 간절히 바라는 평화를 향해서 용기 있는 걸음을 내딛어 주시기를 당부드립니다.
Lee further urged all parties involved in the conflict to take steps toward peace, emphasizing the importance of human rights and lessons from history. South Korea says it will remain on high alert as global uncertainty continues to impact economies and supply networks worldwide. Reporting for Newsline World, Daniela Paulite, LZMNI News.
Up next, President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced a new drone production partnership with Norway. However, the leader warned that Western air defense support remains critically insufficient and is arriving too slowly. The IMF has downgraded its global economic outlook, cutting the 2026 growth forecast to 3.1%, Officials warn that a prolonged Middle East conflict could drag growth as low as 2%. And at least 16 people were wounded after a gunman opened fire at a vocational high school in Turkey. The attacker, a former student, took his own life at the scene following the deadly rampage. More news when Newsline World returns.
Isang pindot lang, pwede kang maka-jackpot. Mukhang masaya at easy money lang. Sa murang halaga, pwede ka na tumaya sa online gambling at e-casino apps. Mayroong sabong, slot machines, mahjong, poker at iba pa. Kailangan mo lang ng smartphone, e-wallet at internet. Pero ang aliw na ito, unti-unting nagiging bitag para sa mga Pilipino. Lalo na kung ang paborito mong artista o influencer ang mukha ng app. Mas madaling makaengganyo, diba? Parang safe naman kasi may kilalang mukha. Pero sa likod ng ngiti, sugal pa rin ang itinutulak. At syempre, mas madali ring itago ang pagkalulong sa bisyong ito. Walang pisikal na kasino o pasugalan, walang kaharap, walang accountability, kaya't mas lumalala ang adiksyon. Dagdag pa rito, maraming online gambling apps at walang regulasyon. Sa likod ng mga makukulay na interface at papremyo, nakatago ang problemang bumabalot ngayon sa bansa. Ang pagkalulong ng maraming Pilipino sa online gambling. Pwede maglaro kahit saan, kahit kailan, kahit sino, bata man o matanda, pwedeng malulong. Ayon sa mga eksperto, ang pagkakalulong sa online gambling ay nagdudulot ng matinding stress at anxiety, pagkakabaon sa utang, pagkawasak ng pamilya, pagkawala ng tiwala sa sarili. At tulad ng ibang bisyo, may mga senyales ito tulad ng hindi makapagpigil kahit walang pera, palihim na tumataya, pagpapabaya sa trabaho, pamilya o sarili. Sa bawat taya, may mga taong tunay na kumikita, mga malalaking negosyante at investors na negosyo ang bisyo ng masa. Para sa kanila, perang pumapasok lang ito. Pero para sa ordinaryong Pilipino, kabuhayan at relasyon ang nauubos. At ang masakit, tila matagal itong nahayaan. Hindi ito naging prioridad ng mga nakaupo sa taas hanggang sa sobrang lumala at halos naapektuhan na ang buong komunidad. Ngayon, sa dami ng nalulung at sa laki ng pinsalang naidulot, sa kapalalong umugong ang mga panukalang batas para higpitan ng online gambling, gaya ng pagbabawal sa paggamit ng e-wallets para tumaya, pagtaas ng minimum bet, mas mahigpit na identity verification, pag-block ng mga illegal na gambling sites, at bawasan o ipagbawal ang mga ads na target ang kabataan. Maaari itong magmukhang laro lang, pero sa katotohanan, isa itong sugal sa kinabukasan. Ang kita na dapat sa mga pangunahing pangangailangan o ipon na uubos sa sugal. At sa mundo ng online gambling, mas madali kang matalo kaysa manalo. Huwag hayaang sugal ang magdikta sa iyong buhay. Isang paalala mula sa SMNI.
The International Monetary Fund has downgraded its outlook for the global economy, cutting its 2026 growth forecast to 3.1%, down from an estimated 3.4% in 2025, and warning that if the Middle East conflict intensifies and drags on, growth could fall as low as 2%. Almar Forsuelo has the details.
The IMF published the downgrade on Tuesday in its World Economic Outlook report, and it paints a sobering picture of where the global economy is headed. The fund's baseline forecast of 3.1% growth for 2026 already factors in the impact of the Middle East war and assumes the conflict will remain limited in duration, intensity, and scope, with disruptions fading by mid-2026. Without the war, the IMF says global growth would have been projected at 3.4% this year. On inflation, the report projects global headline inflation rising to 4.4% in 2026 before easing to 3.7% in 2027. But the IMF was direct about the downside risks. If the conflict and the resulting spike in oil prices persist longer than expected, global growth in 2026 could fall to 2.5%, with inflation climbing to 5.4%. In an extreme scenario, the fund warned growth could drop as low as 2%. on individual economies. The United States is projected to grow by 2.3% in 2026 and 2.1% in 2027, though the IMF noted that higher trade barriers introduced since April 2025 continue to weigh on activity. The euro area is expected to slow further from 1.4% growth in 2025 to just 1.1% in 2026, with both its 2026 and 2027 forecast revised down by 0.2 percentage points from the January update. Emerging market and developing economies saw their 2026 forecast cut by 0.3 percentage points to 3.9%, while the outlook for advanced economies remained broadly unchanged. The IMF used the report to renew its call for coordinated international action, urging governments to combine domestic policy measures with global cooperation to restore stability and strengthen economic resilience. The fund also pushed back against the growing trend of trade restrictions, stating plainly that such measures play a limited role in correcting imbalances but can worsen overall output. The IMF's spring meetings continue this week in Washington, where energy security, sovereign debt, and the economic fallout of the Middle East war are expected to dominate discussions among finance ministers and central bank governors from around the world. Reporting for Newsline World, Almar Forsuelo, SMNI News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced a new drone production partnership with Norway, but used the occasion to deliver a pointed warning to Western allies that air defense support remains critically insufficient and is arriving far too slowly. Angie De Leon reports.
President Volodymyr Zelensky announced a new drone production at a joint press conference with Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store in Oslo, one stop on a European tour aimed at securing more military support for Ukraine.
And today we are starting a drone deal. Jonas said about it, drone deal with Norway. Now our teams will work out the details. We also focused on our joint production projects. They are already up and running, and we can make them stronger. And we discussed our priorities for this year.
Under the new agreement, Norway will back drone production inside Ukraine, while Kyiv will share data, technical knowledge, and expertise in return. Ukrainian drones will also be produced on Norwegian soil. But alongside the partnership announcement, Zelensky delivered an urgent appeal to allies, warning that Western air defense systems and interceptor missiles are not arriving fast enough to meet Ukraine's battlefield needs. He said Ukraine is actively seeking alternative channels to secure certain Patriot missiles, describing the supply situation as a deeply difficult position for his country.
It is difficult, very difficult position for us. What we will do, so we had contacts with Middle East countries. We had contacts with Europeans. Yes, it's not enough to defend our sky, but we work. We try to find different alternative ways to get PAC-2, PAC-3.
When asked whether the United States remain a reliable partner for future air defense deliveries, the Ukrainian president said the issue was, in his words, very difficult, pointing to growing supply pressures tied to the conflicts in the Middle East as a key concern. Norwegian Prime Minister Store confirmed that Norway has donated 6 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine, though he noted that the aircraft are no longer in active service and will require repairs before they can be deployed.
Right, with the pressure from the war in the Middle East, this is a challenge. But I can tell you that we, together with leading partners, Germany, Netherlands, Nordics, and others, we will keep pushing on making these packages relevant for Ukrainian needs. So we will be a strong supporter on that, Mr. President.
Thank you.
The Oslo visit came after Zelensky had earlier stopped in Berlin, where he met German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Several military agreements were signed during that meeting, including deals to help finance the purchase of several hundred missiles for Ukraine's Patriot air defense system. Zelensky's European tour underscores the urgency Kyiv feels as it heads into another phase of the war with air defenses under strain. Angie De Leon, your global citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Top leaders of China and Spain have pledged to deepen cooperation and uphold multilateralism during high-level talks in Beijing. Naomi Paris tells us more.
Meeting for the fourth time in as many years, Xi highlighted the need for stronger coordination amid what he described as a deteriorating international order.
这是你4年内第4次访华。当今世界乱象丛生，国际秩序礼崩乐坏，如何对待国际法和国际秩序，反映的这是一国的世界观、价值观、秩序观、责任观。中国和西班牙都是有原则、讲道义的国家，不愿意站在历史正确的一边。我们应该加强沟通，巩固互信，紧密合作，反对世界倒退回丛林法则，共同捍卫真正的多边主义，守护全球的和平与发展。
Xi also emphasized the importance of opposing what he called a return to the law of the jungle, urging both countries to work together to safeguard global peace and development. For his part, Sanchez welcomed the launch of a new strategic dialogue between the two nations, describing it as a step towards stronger bilateral relations.
Presidente Xi, es un auténtico placer volver a verle, que hoy volvemos a elevar al poner en marcha el diálogo estratégico entre nuestros dos países. Somos un pueblo amigable y constructivo, con una larga historia, como también tiene China. Somos un país estable, predecible, y porque sabemos que solo ese espíritu nos conducirá a una prosperidad y a una paz duradera.
The meeting underscored growing cooperation between China and Spain as both sides seek to expand dialogue and navigate an increasingly complex global landscape. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Naomi Perez, SMNI News.
Vietnamese President and Communist Party Chief To Lam is in Beijing for a state visit, with a formal cooperation document signing ceremony alongside Chinese President Xi Jinping scheduled for Wednesday at the Great Hall of the People. The visit is To Lam's first overseas trip since assuming the presidency, and analysts say the choice of China as his first destination speaks volumes about Hanoi's foreign policy priorities. To Lam arrived in the Chinese capital Tuesday for a four-day state visit, the first foreign trip he has undertaken since being unanimously elected by Vietnamese lawmakers to a 5-year presidential term. Notably, he retained his position as General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam, making him the holder of both the country's top party and state's roles simultaneously. A dual mandate, analysts say, could significantly amplify Vietnam's weight on the world stage. The Beijing visit signals a deliberate strategic choice. Vietnam has been quietly repositioning itself as a more assertive player in the regional and global geopolitics, a shift formalized at the party's five-yearly Congress in January, where foreign affairs was elevated to one of the country's core national pillars for the first time. In his first speech as president last week, To Lam, a former head of public security, underscored Vietnam's commitment to contributing to global peace and development, a theme he has made central to his early leadership. The cooperation documents to be signed Wednesday are expected to cover a range of bilateral areas. The full scope of the agreements will become clearer after the ceremony concludes. At least 16 people have been wounded, including students and teachers, after a gunman opened a fire at a vocational high school in southeastern Turkey. The attacker, a former student, later took his own life at the scene. Paul Montibon has a story.
The shooting occurred Tuesday at a vocational high school in Sanliurfa province in southeast Turkey, sending panicked students fleeing the building as security forces rushed to the scene. Ambulances and armored vehicles arrived at the school, with officers assisting the wounded and providing initial treatment on the ground. According to the Turkey's Interior Ministry, among the 16 injured were 10 students, 4 teachers, a police officer, and a cafeteria worker. All were taken to Sivrek State Hospital for treatment. The ministry identified the attacker as an 18-year-old former student born in 2007. The shooter later killed himself with the same gun. Sanliurfa Governor Hassan Sildak confirmed that a full investigation is now underway, covering both security and judicial dimensions of the attack. He added that 12 of the injured remain hospitalized, while others with moderate conditions were transferred to a facility in the provincial capital. School shootings are considered rare in Turkey, where firearm ownership is subject to a strict and complex licensing process. Authorities have not yet disclosed a motive. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Paul Montibon, SMNI News.
When we return, a remarkable celebration in Germany as Fatu, the world's oldest gorilla in captivity, marked her 69th birthday. The beloved primate celebrated the milestone at the Berlin Zoo with a special feast. And in sports, World Aquatics has lifted all remaining restrictions on Russian athletes. Swimmers and divers will be allowed to compete under their national flag and anthem ahead of the 2028 Olympics. More news after the break.
Pagod? Nanunuyo ang lalamunan? O baka naman nahihirapan kang mag-focus sa ginagawa? Kapartner, baka naman dehydrated ka na. Ang katawan natin ay binubuo ng halos 60% hanggang 70% na tubig. Kung walang sapat na hydration, parang sasakyang walang gasolina ang ating katawan, hindi makakaarangkada. Bakit nga ba mahalaga ang tamang hydration? Hindi lamang ito pamatid-uhaw dahil nakatutulong rin ito sa pagdaloy ng sustansya sa katawan, pagpapanatili ng tamang body temperature, at pagpapakinis ng kutis. Kaya't huwag nang hintayin pang mauhaw ka bago uminom. Ang pagkauhaw ay babala na ng iyong katawan na ikaw ay dehydrated na. Ang standard na payo ng mga doktor ay 8 baso ng tubig ang dapat inumin bawat araw. Pero tandaan, depende ito sa iyong timbang, edad at kung gaano ka ka-active. Samantala, narito ang ilang gabay para manatiling hydrated. Simula ng araw sa isang basong tubig, magbaon ng sariling tumbler para siguradong may maiinom saan man magpunta. At hanggat maaari, piliin ang tubig kaysa mga matatamis na inumin. Kaya mga kapartner, manatiling hydrated para makaiwas sa mas malalang sakit at upang maalagaan ang iyong kalusugan.
The 2026 edition of the Latin American Aerospace and Defense Exhibition kicked off in Sao Paulo, gathering global defense giants to showcase cutting-edge weaponry and security solutions for the continent. This report from Jane Cognita.
The Transamerica Exhibition Center in Sao Paulo has transformed into a strategic hub for global security as LAD 2026 officially opened its doors. This year's event, supported by Brazil's Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Justice, features a massive array of hardware, ranging from armored military trucks and tactical boats to advanced drones and riot control technology. A key focus of this year's expo is protecting law enforcement personnel. Companies like Xing Technology are introducing new fiber raw materials designed specifically for stab-resistant vests, aiming to reduce fatalities among soldiers and police officers across Latin America.
我们还有相应的防刺材料，也是我们的纤维原材料做的。打个比方，保护警察的生命。我们这种材料希望在未来能够保护拉丁美洲所有的警察和士兵的生命。
Beyond protective gear, the exhibition highlights high-precision weaponry from across the globe. Zek manufacturer DSS showcased its latest machine guns and sniper rifles, emphasizing fully localized manufacturing. Meanwhile, specialized units like the Special Operations Group brought a human element to the high-tech displays, showcasing their highly trained canine drug detection units. With over 18,000 professionals and 50 official foreign delegations expected through April 16, LAD 2026 serves as the primary gateway for international companies looking to enter the Latin American security market. As regional tensions and domestic security challenges evolve, the tech on display here represents the front line of the continent's future defense strategy. This has been Jane Cogniter, Global Citizen Correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Fatu, the world's oldest known gorilla living in captivity, marked a remarkable milestone as she celebrated her 69th birthday with a special feast. Stella Maurice has the story.
Reaching an age rarely seen among gorillas, Fatu's life stands as a testament to years of dedicated care and protection. Fatu's celebration on Monday was an extraordinary event, drawing attention from both zoo visitors and animal enthusiasts. As part of her birthday festivities, Fatu was treated to a delectable assortment of fruits and vegetables, which are among her favorite foods. Zookeepers made sure to spoil the senior gorilla with her favorite treats, showcasing their deep care and respect for the elderly animal. At 69 years old, Fatu is believed to be the oldest living gorilla in captivity, surpassing the typical life expectancy of 50 to 60 years for gorillas in zoos and 30 to 40 years in the wild. Born in the wild in Central Africa, Fatu arrived at the Berlin Zoo as a young gorilla, which she has lived for the majority of her life. Over the years, she has become a cherished ambassador for this species, drawing visitors and highlighting the importance of conservation efforts for the critically endangered western lowland gorillas. Gorillas in captivity are often prone to a range of health challenges as they age, but Fatu's caregivers have ensured she maintains a comfortable and enriching environment. Fatu's milestone also serves as an opportunity to raise awareness about the plight of gorillas in the wild. The western lowland gorilla is critically endangered due to habitat loss, poaching, and disease. Conservation organizations around the world are working hard to protect the species, with efforts including anti-poaching patrols and habitat restoration. This has been Stella Maurice, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Selena Gomez has reunited with childhood friend Demi Lovato, showing support at the opening night of Lovato's latest tour in Florida. Meanwhile, Park Shin-hye and Choi Tae-joon are expecting their second child, with the couple set to welcome the baby later this year. Andrea Santos has the showbuzz.
Pop star Selena Gomez traveled to Orlando to attend the launch of Lovato's 18-date It's Not That Deep tour, marking a rare public appearance together for the two stars. The reunion comes nearly a decade after their last public sighting together when they posed at an award event in Los Angeles back in 2017. Once seen as close friends during their early careers, the two artists have had a complicated relationship over the years, making the moment especially meaningful for fans. Their reunion has sparked excitement online, with many hoping it signals a renewed friendship between the longtime pop stars. This has been Andrea Santos, your citizen correspondent, bringing you the latest showbuzz.
Latest sports updates. World Aquatics has lifted restrictions on Russian athletes, allowing them to compete under their national flag and anthem ahead of the 2028 Olympics. Meanwhile, Leila Fernandez showcased her experience and composure to stop Alex Yala in the opening round of the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix. This report.
World Aquatics has lifted its ban on Russian athletes.
The decision marks a major policy shift after years of sanctions following start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict in 2022, which led to Russia and Belarus being barred from international competitions. Under the new ruling, Russian and Belarusian swimmers, divers, and water polo players can now participate in World Aquatics events with full national representation, ending the requirement to compete as neutral athletes. World Aquatics President Hussein Al-Musallam said the move aims to promote unity in sports, emphasizing that competitions should remain a space for peaceful international participation. The decision, however, drew strong criticism from Ukraine, with officials condemning the return of Russian symbols in global sporting events. Ukraine has consistently opposed the reintegration of Russian athletes, even staging boycotts, including forfeiting a recent water polo match in protests. While other sports like judo and taekwondo have already reinstated Russia, World Aquatics becomes the most prominent federation to fully restore participation. Russian officials welcomed the move, calling it a step toward rebuilding international sporting ties. Despite the reinstatement, athletes will still be required to undergo anti-doping tests and background checks before competing. The decision could influence broader Olympic policy as the International Olympic Committee continues to evaluate the status of Russian athletes ahead of the Los Angeles 2028 Games. Meanwhile, in a rare and historic matchup between two players of Filipino descent on the WTA stage, Leylah Fernandez secured a convincing 6-1, 6-4 victory over Ayala in their first round clash. The Canadian came out firing, quickly asserting control with aggressive shot-making and precise placement. She broke Ayala's serve twice early and raced to a 5-0 lead in the opening set. Ayala managed to get on the board with a strong service hold highlighted by a backhand winner, but Fernandez stayed in command and closed out the first set 6-1. In the second set, Fernandez maintained the pressure, breaking early to seize a 2-1 advantage. Her mix of powerful forehands and well-timed drop shots kept Ayala on the defensive. The Filipina fought back late, breaking serve and saving 2 match points to narrow the gap to 5-4. But Fernandez regained control just in time, sealing the win with a composed service game capped by an ace. Fernandez converted 4 of 8 breakpoint opportunities, while Ayala managed to convert just 1 of her 3 chances. The victory sends Fernandez into the next round of the tournament, while Ayala exits early but gains valuable experience heading deeper into the clay court season. Reporting for Newsline World, this has been Carlo De La Peña bringing you the latest sports news. And before we end, may you be inspired with the words of the Psalm. Winning and losing begin in the mind, and your mind is the womb of your faith. And that's all for this edition of Newsline World. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Carlo De La Peña. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.